Welcome back to another edition of the Sammoooo Show. This is episode 4. I'm your host, the Sammoooo, also known as Sam Schultz, and my co-host, David Schultz, down in Louisiana. And today we're going to be talking about the big major Final Four with UConn, Miami, San Diego State, and FAU.
Yeah,
How do you
quite
feel
the
about
tournament.
this?
Yeah, quite the tournament so far, Samo.
Yeah.
UConn has been incredibly dominant.
Mm.
FAU catches a big break. They've been very good, but they caught a big break with Purdue out, right? Miami coming back. I mean, they were done. They were down 13 points, and it was going in the wrong direction. And then Texas just couldn't get a bucket. And who do we miss? Oh, San Diego State.
San Diego State.
Creighton with the foul call. So, and they've been very good against defense travels. But it has been interesting. Heard a lot of different things. You know, should teams have been? I heard people thought they were not seeded properly. I mean, didn't UConn? We've been over this. UConn started the season like not preseason ranked or like 20th.
No.
Then they got all the way up into the top 5 because they were like 14-0. But then they finish. I mean, didn't they finish like? Let's see here. They're 29-8, so they've won 4. So they finished like 10-8. But they're going to be how highly seeded should they have been, right? FAU should have been seeded highly. They have one nice win over Florida. Now they only had a couple of losses, and one of their losses was to UAB, and then they proceeded to beat them in the championship game in the conference tournament. But they haven't beaten anybody. And what were you going to see them, 7 or 8? Okay, you probably weren't going to get any more than that. And, they barely beat Memphis. Some people think that Memphis should have won the basketball game. So I'm not so sure that they got underseeded. They're good. We've talked about them, in previous episodes, just because the conference that they're in, it kind of gets overlooked. But, and I know them because they played South Alabama and they hammered the Jaguars earlier in the year, not knowing how good they were at the time. But all of a sudden, they got 2 losses. You got to be pretty good if you only have that. But I'm not so sure that they should have been seeded any differently. And we have upsets, right? I mean, Tennessee didn't have their point guard. Purdue got out-coached, which is usually the case. Kansas didn't have their coach. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that this tournament has kind of gone the way that it has. Speaking of gone, just to let everybody know that Sammoooo made the Elite 8, but Alabama did not.
That's exactly correct. I did.
You saw San Diego State and Creighton in Louisville. That was a great ball game. I was listening on my way over I-10. How was the game from your vantage point?
The atmosphere was very crazy. It was mixed. There were a lot of Creighton fans, but San Diego State fans sounded louder. The game, it was close every time, the whole time. There was no lead ways or anything. Neither team could shoot. So that's a mistake.
Well, Creighton was like 2 for 19 from 3.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those guys that usually when I was your age, I would blame the refs, but I can't blame the referees when I make a bunch of 3-pointers all year long and I go 2 for 19.
They had 4 air balls.
Yeah, that's not going to cut it.
No.
That's not going to cut it. So they had their shot. They missed. I think it's going to be a great Final Four. I know people are going to talk about the ratings and lack thereof. Well, I don't work for CBS, so I don't really care about the ratings. That's not my problem. I will watch it, and it'll be a lot of fun. Can you imagine if FAU or San Diego State wins this thing, right? And one of them is going to have a shot, right? Because, maybe the 2 better teams are playing against each other in UConn and Miami. Well, put it this way, the 2 Power 5 teams are playing against each other, and the 2 Group of 5 teams are playing against each other. So one of those teams is going to have a shot, and I think it's going to be great. I would be surprised if either Miami or UConn blows out the other team. FAU is really good, and San Diego State plays some really good defense. They had, Creighton had a chance to blow them out right at the beginning of the second half, and San Diego State caught up and took the lead in about 3.5 minutes, and it was a ball game from there. You were right.
It was one of the craziest endings in March Madness right now, I think.
A little anticlimactic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy because FAU or San Diego State had the ball and threw it away, and Creighton ties the game up. What happened there? And then you have the foul controversy. And I'm one of those guys, Sammo. If it's a foul in the first 30 seconds, it's got to be a foul in the last 30 seconds.
I
admit
a lot
that
of people say.
Go ahead.
A lot of people say at that moment in this tournament, there should have been no whistle called, but like it's the rules. Rules are rules. It should have been called.
Yeah, I think that to be the case. I understand what people say, and sure, an extra 5 minutes would have been great for the fans and Creighton, obviously, and give credit to the Blue Jays, from Coach McDermott to the players. No one blamed the referees. Person who committed the foul said, yeah, I had my hand on him, and, that's the way it goes. I don't like the idea that, you hear, well, let the players determine the outcome. The players did. He committed a foul.
Yeah, there was a foul.
No, the players did determine it, and that's the way I see it. So, everyone's thinking that UConn is the heavy favorite, and I guess betting odds that they are. I think anyone's got a shot. If you don't think Miami's got a shot, you weren't watching the game yesterday. And if you don't think that San Diego State or FAU has a shot, then you haven't been paying attention at all, because San Diego State, good luck playing offense against them in the second half.
Yeah.
We'll see if UConn's offense, which has been very good. They've been, out of anybody in the tournament, certainly anybody that's left, they've been the most dominant team in the tournament. We'll see if that holds up against San Diego State if it gets that far.
Who's had the harder bracket out of the four? Who's had the harder?
Oh, that's a good question. So I looked at Florida Atlantic. Maybe they've had the most difficult, right? I mean, UConn played Gonzaga, right? Isn't Gonzaga? Yeah. They lead the league. They led the nation in scoring, and they only scored 54 points. The thing is, in that one, Drew Timme was in foul trouble, right? He sat out the last 4 minutes of the first half and picked up a couple of quick fouls in the second half. So he sat down for much of it. I'm not sure that would have made a difference in the end. So I'm not going to say that, UConn would have lost. I probably would have been a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But again, we talked about Florida Atlantic getting a little bit of a break. I mean, for a bit, right? I mean, they played Memphis, so that's an 8-9 matchup. Then they played Fairleigh Dickinson because they knocked off Purdue. Then they played the 4-seed Tennessee without their point guard. Now, Tennessee had beaten the Cajuns. Yeah. They actually played better against Duke than they did against the Cajuns. But still, they're a banged-up basketball team. And FAU was able to take advantage of that. The big ball game that they did, the impressive one was Kansas State. I didn't think they were going to win that game going into it, and I didn't think they were going to win the game when I was watching it. And yet they were able to pull that one off. So that was impressive. Let's see the other ones. That's a good question. Who had the toughest? Let's see what UConn was. UConn played Iona, St. Mary's, Arkansas, Gonzaga. So Gonzaga's tough, right? But they played the 4-13 matchup, then the 4-5 matchup, and then they didn't have to play, was it Kansas in their bracket? They didn't have to play Kansas because Arkansas took down Kansas.
Creighton had to play Baylor, NC State, and Princeton. I mean, Baylor is the only.
Baylor was a 3 seed. What seed was Baylor?
3.
So I still think right now, probably FAU had the toughest one.
Yeah.
And Miami, they had to play, right? They played Texas. So Miami played, well, I mean, you got to look at Miami, right? I mean, Miami had the hardest path now that we get to them. They beat Drake. That's a 5-12 matchup. A lot of people had Drake in that ballgame. They played the 4-5 matchup, hammered Indiana. They took down number 1 Houston, and they beat number 2 Texas. So they beat a 1, 2, and 4 seed. That's really impressive I don't think Miami's ever been in the Final Four. So
they made the Elite Eight last year.
What's that?
But they made the Elite Eight last year,
That's
but
right.
didn't get to the Final Four.
Right.
But
and what was it? Jordan Miller was perfect from the floor and the free throw line.
He was
7 for 7 from the floor and 13 for 13 from the free throw line. Yeah, he was outstanding.
Jeez.
And we were talking about Norshad Omier from Miami. He played at Arkansas State last year. He had a really good season at Arkansas State. He may have been the Sun Belt Player of the Year. 18 points, almost 18 points, and 12 rebounds a game. Let's see who was the 2022 Sun Belt Basketball Player of the Year.
Wow, he was.
He came down to. They came down to South Alabama. He got into foul trouble. And so he didn't play very well in that ball game. South Alabama actually won. Let's see here. Yeah, Omier was the Sun Belt Player of the Year in 2022, Sammoooo.
Huh. That's odd.
Yeah, so a lot of times you get guys, moving on from a group of 5 schools to Power 5 schools, and it's too big a leap, and you're coming off the bench and you're not playing, and his numbers went down, although his rebounding numbers were really good.
Yeah.
He went from 12 rebounds a game to 10, from the Sun Belt to the ACC. So that's really impressive. And his points went down. His points went down by 4, but I bet if we looked a little bit deeper in the numbers, he probably took lesser shots. He's got a lot of teammates that can help him out with the scoring.
What was Isaiah Wong?
He had a good ball game in the second half. Was he struggling in the first half? I thought he sort of struggled in the first half. Let's see. He came through in a big way. He was making a lot of those mid-range jumpers. He ended up 5 of 12. I feel like most of that, I saw most of them fall. He had 14 points. He did have 4 turnovers. Only 1 assist. They, oddly enough, only had 11 assists on 29 field goals. But here's where Miami won the game. They hit 28 of 32 free throws. And I thought I heard Jim Nantz say that when they were down by 13, they did not hit 1 3 to make a comeback.
Really?
They were 2 of 8 and from 3-point land, and that may have all been in the first half. They did not make 1 3 in their big comeback yesterday. They made a bunch of free throws. Some of them, some questionable calls for sure, but that's the difference in the game. Texas was a total of 11 out of 15 at the free throw line. So that's 17 points difference, 28 out of 32, 11 out of 15. So that's, obviously the shot differential is the big thing I'm sure Texas fans are going to complain about. But I would look at the point differential, and it was a 17-point differential in a 7-point game.
Yeah.
So that would be a big deal in that one. All right. What do you got coming for this weekend? Who do you like in the Final Four and then for the championship game? Now that neither Alabama nor Houston, our 2 picks, are in the Final Four. Not great, Samuel.
Not good. I like UConn and San Diego State.
Okay. Well, I'll take the opposite just to be different. I will take Miami, although I think UConn's really good, and I will take FAU. And I think it's going to be tough. I think FAU it's going to be a tough matchup.
It's going to be a close
game. They did a good job against Tennessee, and San Diego State probably a little bit better offensively. And we'll see if they go through some cold stretches like Tennessee does. So that'll be interesting. That will be interesting. All right. Good episode, Sammoooo.
Great episode. This has been your host, Samuel Schultz from Louisville, Kentucky, and your co-host, Dave Schultz. And we're signing off, back with episode 5 next.
Thanks, Sammoooo. Good job.
Good show.
All right.